Many sources underestimate the strength of the German army in 1944, mistakenly believing that after the Battle of Kursk, the outcome of the war was a foregone conclusion. For those involved, however, the reality was different. Germany still posed a serious threat on all fronts. Operation Market Garden was a prime example of the Wehrmacht's last major victory in World War II. This success may have influenced the fact that Berlin eventually went to the USSR rather than the Western Allies. After the Normandy landings, the question of taking the German capital was acute. However, the success of the Allies was overshadowed by the geographical factor. From the landing beach to the German border was more than 700 kilometers by road, and to Berlin, more than 1,000. By mid-1944, both the USSR, which was liberating Belarus, and the Western Allies were still far from Germany's borders. Despite the certainty of victory, the anti-Hitler coalition faced a difficult task: to overcome significant distances to Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany, was the ultimate prize for which all members of the coalition were vying. The capture of Berlin had not only symbolic value. The raising of the flag over the Reichstag would define in the mass consciousness of the main winner of the war. In addition, control over Berlin gave serious advantages in the post-war negotiations on the division of Europe. The more territory that could be seized, the stronger would be the position in the diplomatic arena. This situation turned the final stage of the war into a real race between the Allies. Each side sought to advance as quickly as possible deep into Germany. Initially, the strategy of the Western Allies seemed simple: land, encircle, capture, and repeat all the way to Berlin. Operation Cobra, launched after the Normandy assault, embodied this plan. However, by September 1944, problems were revealed. The Western Front was far inferior to the Eastern Front in scale. Although France was liberated by the end of August, the battles here were less intense. For example, the Battle of Paris involved about 40,000 men on both sides, while in the Battle of Stalingrad alone, more than 2 million soldiers on both sides died. Germany initially concentrated fewer forces in the west, with the bulk of them on the Siegfried Line. This created the illusion of an easy advance for the Allies, but carried the danger of underestimating the enemy. The Siegfried Line, a powerful defensive frontier on Germany's borders with France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, became a serious obstacle for the Western Allies. As the USSR advanced rapidly toward Berlin, the US and Britain faced serious supply problems. Supplies were delivered to the front mainly by truck, as ports and railroads had been destroyed by previous bombing raids. Attacks on the Siegfried Line threatened to turn into fruitless attempts to breach an impregnable wall. In this situation, British General Bernard Montgomery proposed a bold plan: to land a landing force behind enemy lines, bypass the Siegfried Line, and encircle it. This maneuver could not only neutralize the German defenses, but, if successful, cause panic in Germany, potentially leading to the surrender of Berlin to the Western Allies. Such a strategy was risky, but it promised to solve several problems at once: to overcome fortifications, bypass logistical difficulties, and accelerate the advance toward the German capital. In early September 1944, General Montgomery announced the possibility of British troops taking Berlin within 2 to 3 weeks of the new operation. Although Commander-in-Chief Eisenhower was doubtful, the Fau-2 missile strikes on London increased British pressure. The plan for Operation Market Garden, set for September 17th, was born. The goal was to capture Berlin before Christmas. The plan consisted of two parts. The first part of Marquette was a landing in the southern Netherlands to capture key bridges and get beyond the Rhine River. The second part of Operation Garden was a rapid ground offensive to link up with the amphibious assault. The ground forces were to cover almost 100 kilometers in 2 days to consolidate the success of the landing force. This plan, although it seemed adventurous, was based on the successful experience of German operations at the beginning of World War II. The scale of the operation was impressive. 35,000 paratroopers, 568 guns, and 2,000 jeeps were planned to land behind enemy lines. By comparison, the German landing on Crete in 1941 had only 6,000 paratroopers. The largest airborne operation in history, Market Garden, faced serious problems from the start. On September 17, 1944, British paratroopers, coming under fire from German air defense, were landed 10 kilometers from the landing site. The paratroopers found themselves scattered over a large area, resulting in the loss of valuable time to gather forces and re-establish communications. The effect of surprise was lost. As a result, instead of several thousand men, only Lieutenant Colonel John Frost's battalion made its way to the strategically important bridge. The rest of the units were ambushed, seemed to be surrounded, forced to go on the defensive, moving slower than planned. The American paratroopers achieved partial success, capturing the nearest bridges. However, the British, responsible for the key site, faced serious difficulties. Ground Operation Garden, under the command of General Horrocks, significantly behind schedule. In the first 24 hours, only 8 kilometers were passed, instead of the planned 50. After 48 hours, only the nearest American positions were reached. To the bridgehead on the Rhine remained more than 40 kilometers. Lieutenant Colonel Frost's battalion heroically defended the key bridge for 3 days, instead of the planned 2, but was forced to retreat. Even emergency reinforcements by Polish paratroopers did not change the situation. The paratroopers were scattered across enemy territory, where they were met with a barrage of Wehrmacht fire. An attempt to supply from the air on September 23rd resulted in most of the supplies ending up in German hands. The ground forces, desperate to break through to their encircled comrades, were not only stranded, but were themselves subjected to dangerous enemy counterattacks. Intended as a lightning-fast 48-hour rush, the operation turned into a week-long bloodbath. On September 25th, the surviving British units were ordered to retreat, marking the end of Operation Market Garden. This battle is often referred to as the Wehrmacht's last major success in World War II. Some modern historians credit this failure as the reason why the Western Allies missed the opportunity to be the first to enter Berlin. The reality, however, is more complex. General Montgomery himself, the plan's developer, recognized that the chances of capturing Berlin were lost much earlier, when a larger offensive strategy could not be created after the Normandy landings. Despite popular opinion, Operation Market Garden cannot be unequivocally considered a defeat for the Allies. They achieved a number of important objectives. They displaced the Germans from the key positions of launching missiles V2 on London, strengthened in the Netherlands, and created a bridgehead behind the Siegfried Line. However, the price of success was high. For every German soldier killed, 5 Allied soldiers were killed. Most of the losses were in the most ambitious and problematic area at Arnhem. There is a theory that the failures were caused by the actions of a German spy who revealed details of the operation a week before it began. General Montgomery emphasized that contemporaries tended to exaggerate the importance of Market Garden. In his opinion, the capture of a bridgehead on the Rhine was not the key to the capture of Berlin. The scale of the battles on the Western Front was not comparable to the grandiose battles in the East. The reality of the war was harsher than the ambitious plans. Neither 35,000 paratroopers nor twice as large a land group with reinforcements could not take Berlin in 2 weeks, even with the ideal outcome of the Operation Market Garden. The scale of forces required for such a task is clearly demonstrated by the Soviet experience. The USSR stormed Berlin with an army of 2 million men, losing 75,000 soldiers killed. The Western Allies simply did not have such resources on this front. The only chance for a quick capture of the German capital could be a panic in the leadership of the Third Reich, as General Montgomery said. A full-fledged ground operation required forces many times greater than those planned to gather on the Rhine, even taking into account reinforcements. The situation of April 1945 is indicative. When the Soviet troops stormed the Zalo Heights 60 kilometers from Berlin, and the Western Allies, despite the failure of the Market Garden, were 120 kilometers from the city on the opposite side. However, they did not dare to assault. General Eisenhower's decision not to storm Berlin is still controversial, but in reality, the future US president saved the lives of tens of thousands of American soldiers. Back in March 1945, Eisenhower, together with General Bradley, accurately assessed the potential losses in the storming of the German capital and concluded that the price was too high. On the Western Front, US forces were advancing rapidly, which caused the leadership to fear possible German counterattacks. However, these fears did not materialize, nor did rumors of Hitler's impregnable fortress in the Alps. It is not quite correct to criticize the general's decisions ex post facto. In the opinion of both Montgomery and Eisenhower, the chances of capturing Berlin were lost long before the fall of 1944, perhaps even earlier in the summer. Operation Market Garden demonstrated that even at the end of the war, Germany could offer effective resistance under certain conditions. It confirmed the correctness of Eisenhower's cautious approach.